Hello and welcome to In Touch with Durham County. I'm Deborah Craig-Ray, General Manager of Strategic Planning and Innovation. Our Constitution requires a count every 10 years of each person who is residing in the United States, regardless of immigration status or citizenship. The Census Bureau's goal for the 2020 census is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. The first census was in 1790. Just what is the census and how will it be handled in our community? We've invited Kate Fellman, co-chair of the Durham Census Complete Count Committee, to discuss how our community will benefit from an accurate count. Also, next month we vote. Elections Director Bowens is here to share all the information we need to know before heading to the polls in March. Yes, I said March. Welcome, Kate. We're so glad you could join us today. We're looking forward to a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and to get everybody in Durham counted.
Yes, that's a big job.
Yeah.
So you co-chair what's called the Census Complete Count Committee. What's the primary role of that group? Exactly what are you doing with a team of citizens?
Well, we're partnering and facilitating a group of public and private and community organizations to ensure that Durham gets counted and that participation in the census is communicated and why it's important that everyone counts in Durham. So we're out in the community sharing the good news about the census and making sure everybody has what they need to be counted.
Excellent, excellent. Please describe some of the areas of business and community engagement that some of these people represent. What types of activities are taking place right now in Durham?
So we have a faith committee that's doing outreach to all of our faith institutions. We have a business committee that consists of the Durham Chamber, the Downtown Durham Inc., that is doing outreach to businesses and HR departments to make sure the employees are educated on the census. We also have several universities represented at our committee, from Duke to Durham Tech to NCCU, to make sure that all of students are aware of being counted on April 1st, and community groups that represent immigrants and community members and nonprofits and service agencies. So we're really trying to bring everyone together to make sure that all of our community members are represented and that our committee really reflects the face of Durham.
Indeed, a comprehensive group. As I mentioned, our first census was held in 1790. Why do we hold a census every 10 years?
Well, every 10 years, we need to get an accurate count of our citizenship and residents of our communities so that we can appropriate funding, the federal government funding, to our local communities. About $1,600 for each person is appropriated this year to each person counted in the census. So in addition to helping us plan for school funding and health and human service funding, the census also counts how many districts we'll have, congressional districts we'll have in North Carolina. And chances are, with an accurate count, we'll have at least one more representative to send to Washington for Congress.
Well, that's really exciting because I believe we have 13 now.
We have 13 now, and based on estimates, we're due to get at least one more congressional seat.
Yeah, and that probably means we're taking some away from another state, but we're not going to worry about that.
We won't worry about that. A lot of people are moving to North Carolina, so we want them all to be counted in our population.
Absolutely. So why is community involvement so important to the census process?
Well, people need to know that the census is coming up. Since it only happens every 10 years, a lot of people don't remember taking part in a census. So it's really important for all of our community members to be talking about the census and why it matters to Durham, why it matters for our local budget and for our schools. You know, we want adequate teaching staff for all of our students. We want adequate health services for all of our students and transportation funding, all of the things that are determined using census data that we rely on. It's estimated about $100,000 will be lost for every family of 5 not counted in Durham County for over a 10-year period. So that's a lot at stake for one household not counted.
Absolutely.
So that's why we need to make sure that everyone knows that, hey, not everyone can vote this year, but everyone can participate and should participate in the census.
Yes, yes. So please tell us how we will receive information about the census and how we can respond.
You will receive a mailer between March and April 1st. You should receive at least one mailer telling you, for each household, telling them how to respond, and one member from each household should respond to the census. Now, you can do this a couple of ways. You can go online. This is the first time they're trying an online response census, so that's exciting. We're going to try to get as many people to go online and take the census. If you do not go online or you can't, there's a phone number you can call to take the census by phone, or they will, if you do not do either one of those, census staff will knock on your door and get the count for your household. So you can save a knock at the door if you go ahead and take the census online or make a phone call. They have it in multiple languages, so it should be really accessible for every family to be counted. And just one member of the household should count every member of the household.
Absolutely. So I understand in 2010 we had about 74% of our residents counted, and so obviously we left some money on the table.
Oh yeah.
What is our goal this year, and what are the challenges in getting a complete count?
Well, obviously our goal is 100% counted because we want all of Durham to count. But realistically, we think we can increase that percentage up to 82% of Durham residents counted. And the challenges to getting that complete count are, there's a technology divide where people don't have computers or access in their houses. So that's why we're partnering with the Durham County Library to make sure that they have computers available for people to take census. There are some nonprofits who are getting some funding to have tablets to take around. And it's also just really important, people, if they don't know how important it is and that it is our duty to take the census, they might think it's not that important, or think that maybe they shouldn't be counted if they're not a citizen. So we really want to alleviate people's concerns about taking the census and share with them just why it matters so much.
Absolutely. Now, we have what's called some hard to count communities. I think the census term is hard to enumerate.
Yeah.
But basically, there are certain groups that we seem to have a challenge in finding them and having them respond to the census. Can you talk about that a little bit? What are some of those groups or communities?
Well, children under the age of 6 are often undercounted, or the most likely to be undercounted, since parents don't necessarily think that they should be counting the babies in the household, but they absolutely should. Anyone living in your household on April 1st should be counted. Also, renters are likely to be undercounted, people of color, immigrants and non-citizens, because of that there was a citizenship question possibly going to be on the census that the court ordered was not allowed to be on the census. But also, there's a lot of fear right now about taking part in the census. So we're really trying to alleviate people's fears, give them the straight up facts so that they can participate and our community can be represented.
Yeah, that's very important. Talk about the role that some of our partners are playing. You mentioned partners at the top. What are we doing working with the state of North Carolina?
So the NC Census Committee is very active and has been active for over a year now. And they are doing the same thing that we're doing on a local level at the statewide level. So they're partnering with government and service agencies and complete count committees like ours to make sure that everyone has the resources that they need and the information they need to have accurate counts in their communities. And so if you go to nccensus.org, there's a lot of tools available to you on that website for North Carolina specifically. Data, mapping, all sorts of great tools on the NC Census website.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what about with the federal government, the Census Bureau itself? What are we doing partnering with them?
Well, they have a census office right here in Durham that is open, and they are actually hiring census staff to go out and go door to door and reach our community members who did not respond via the online or phone call. So they are also working with our Complete Count Committee and giving us all of the resources that we need. There are shared materials in multiple languages on census.gov website, and that's where you can go to find jobs. So really go visit the census.gov and the nccensus.org websites, and you can find all of the tools that you need to make sure that you have resources and information for your communities.
Right. So do you find that people are having questions about the census, and they are maybe trying to reach out to maybe get some presentations with their groups or neighborhood associations, that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that the Complete Count Committee is doing as well, is we take speaking opportunities to come and talk to folks about the importance of the census and the when, where, how, why. We've developed a little handout for resource that is Durham specific and has a map of our hard to count neighborhoods that we look forward to getting out to all of our community partners and throughout the Durham community to really educate people on the importance of the census. So we take speaking requests. I know that the city and the county staff has been doing a lot of presentations, so we are happy to come out and talk census for the next few months.
Great. Now, some people have some concerns about filling out a census form. I guess they have concerns about some of the questions that might be asked. Should they be concerned?
Well, by law, all of this data is the personal data is confidential, and census staff are required to sign a lifetime agreement that they will never reveal any census data or personal information from the households that they help count. So this is all private. They just use the statistical data that they collect, not the personal data, like the house or the person. So it is confidential data. It's required to be confidential by law. And so that's what we're trying to tell folks. It is safe to take the census. They are required to keep this data confidential. And we will do our best. If we understand that some communities are still very concerned about giving information to the government, but by law, this information should be kept confidential.
Right. And, we tend to think of a traditional single-family home as a place where most people live. But, for example, where are college students counted?
So the college campuses will count the students who are residing on their campus on April 1st. So a parent does not include the college student who is away at school. The campus will count those students. And the same thing with other institutions like detention centers and group assisted living facilities. Right. Those facilities will count their residents, and they have a special way for counting people who live in these group residential treatment facilities and homes.
Right. So that's, I guess, part of the work that the census group has been doing, just kind of educating folks about those special circumstances.
Yes.
Yes. So I've seen a number of ads on social media about census jobs available. Is that still going on?
Absolutely. They're recruiting. They want to have enough folks to go door to door, and these are good paying jobs. They're temporary, but they are much needed. So if you know anybody looking for work, please spread the word, send them to census.gov to sign up to be part of our Complete Count crew, a census crew out in the community this summer.
Great, great. Well, I have really enjoyed our conversation. There is a lot going on with the census. Your group is doing a masterful job. We just want to thank you for all your efforts.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Is there any one thing we didn't ask about that you want to add?
Durham counts. Let's make sure every Durham resident is counted so that we can have the funding and the services that we need here in Durham to take care of our residents.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the upcoming March 3rd primary election. Stay with us.
How do I take the 2020 census? In March 2020, every address in the country will receive an invitation to complete a simple questionnaire, and there are 3 ways to respond. Number 1, do it online. Number 2, call by phone. Number 3, send it by mail. For those who don't respond, a census taker from your community will follow up and assist you. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Welcome back. I'm joined by our Durham County Elections Director, Derek Bowens, who will help us all get ready for the March 3rd primary election. Welcome, Derek. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Deborah. Pleasure to be here.
We've got quite a few things to discuss, so let's get rolling.
All right.
All right. Now, we have a presidential primary coming in March. Normally, these things have been held in May. Why the date change?
I think the General Assembly's intent was to give North Carolina an earlier say-so in the process so that we'd have a voice a little bit sooner. A lot of times in May, at times decisions kind of been de facto know have been made. So I think it was an opportunity to get North Carolina a bigger voice in the process.
Okay, all right. So what happens with the workload in your office during a presidential year? I know it's pretty busy otherwise, but is it different in the presidential year?
Yes, we see huge spikes in voter registration activity, huge spikes in absentee by mail requests and ballot distributions. We also tend to increase outreach efforts. Lots of board members, increase in precinct officials, so a substantial amount more training, a lot of logistics preparation, increase in one-stop sites. So just a heavier load in each area because of the magnitude of the election and also public interest.
Yes, of course. Well, I remember that you recommend that we vote early each time. I've had you on a few times, and I can recall that you kind of stressed that point. Yes. So what is the schedule for early voting, and where are some of the voting locations?
Absolutely. That point is still true. Our motto is vote early, avoid long lines. We've got 17 days of early voting for the primary election from February 13th through February the 29th at 8 different locations in the county. During the week, we're open from 8 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. The first 2 Saturdays, the 15th and the 22nd, we're open from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. Sundays, 12 to 4, and then the final Saturday, the 29th, from 8 to 3, which is dictated by law. We're at our library, South, North, East Regional, NCCU, the Criminal Justice Resource Center. We're at Eno River Unitarian Universalist, Duke University, and also Durham Tech North Community College.
So a wide array so that it can be convenient to our citizens.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So what is the March 3rd primary election day schedule? What are the hours for that day?
So election day will be, all 57 polling places will be open. Of course, if you opt to vote on election day, you have to go to your home precinct. The polls will be open from 6:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. on that day.
Okay, good deal. So we mentioned that it's a presidential primary, but of course there are many other offices on a ballot. There's state races, local races. Can you talk about that for us?
Sure. So this actually is a primary and election. The election piece is for the school board. In Durham, we have the school board of election in March and not November. All the other races will actually go, candidates or nominees will be selected from the primary and will go to the November election for selection. If there's more candidates than the seats to be filled, and we can go down a whole, there's a lot of detail there. But we've got county commission is on the primary ballot. We've got NC Senate 20 is on the ballot. We've got some U.S. Senator primaries, presidential primary, of course, some Council of State offices, and a couple of other district offices that will also be on the ballot. Depends on what party primary you're voting in, but for the summation, many of those offices will be on those ballots.
Right, so people really should pay attention.
Yes.
Do their
absolutely.
homework.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if a person's not registered, what must they do to register, and are there deadlines involved?
Yeah, so the registration deadline for the March primary is February the 7th. It closes, but then it opens back up on the 13th because during early voting you can register and vote at the same time.
Okay.
If you meet that registration deadline, of course, you just fill out a voter registration form that has to be in our office by 5 o'clock on that day. Or if it's postmarked by that date and received after, we would also accept that. In regards to early voting, if you decide you want to register and vote, you must provide a proof of residency document. That can be anything from a bank statement, utility bill, government check, paycheck, or other government document with a voter's name and residence address. And also an NC driver's license, passport if it has residential address on it.
Yeah. So what about someone who's 17, but they'll turn 18 by the November election? Are they able to vote in the primary?
They are. Under North Carolina law, 17-year-olds who will be 18 by the date of the general election can vote in the primary. They will not be able to participate in the school board race because that is an election and not a primary.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's just one of the things I always recall. I was so excited when I was 17 in the spring, but I could vote.
Yes.
So, it was just super exciting. So let's talk a little bit about the type of voting machines that we use here in Durham County. You know, we hear a lot of conversation about one type versus another. We should get rid of machines and just use paper ballots, which probably won't work in a community our size. So what type of machines do we have, and why do we have those types?
So in 2017, the Durham County Board of Elections, or actually 2019, sorry, the Durham County Board of Elections finally used capital funds to purchase new voting equipment. Durham had been using what we call the M100s, which are optical scan voting machines, and they are paper ballot based. Durham has always been a paper ballot county, and we continue to be even with the new equipment. That old equipment was actually manufactured beginning in 1996, and we purchased in Durham around 2006, 2007, and we've been using them ever since. So typically the end of life projection is 10 years, so we were beyond that number. So the board went through the process, the county gave us the funds, and we purchased the DS200, which is a faster, better optical scan or paper ballot counting machine, and we rolled those out in 2019, and they've been very successful so far, and we plan to continue to use them into the future.
Good deal. Now, the good thing about the machine that we use, as I understand it, if, God forbid, the power would go out, people can still vote.
Absolutely.
And then you can put those ballots in the scanner, right?
Absolutely. So there is a protocol. All of our polling officials are aware of our emergency procedures. In the event there is a power outage, they have an emergency bin which they can activate, open up. Ballots will go into that emergency bin until issues are resolved with the machine. Once they're resolved, there's a protocol for the judges to come together, remove those ballots, announce that they're inserting ballots from the emergency bin into the tabulator for tabulation. And there's also battery power. If power did go out, those machines run on battery power for a good bit of time. So in the event that we needed to come out and address something, it wouldn't be automatic initiation of an emergency bin if it was an issue of ballots being read into the tabulator.
Now, is there anything else that the voters need to know before showing up to vote during this cycle?
I would say certainly no photo ID is required to vote, which I assume we'll talk about. You know, it is quite a process. Primaries are different. One of the things that you'll be asked to state is your party primary. Unaffiliated voters get to choose which party primary they want to participate in, and that only applies to Democratic, Libertarian, or Republican ballots. The Green Party and Constitution have a closed primary, so unaffiliated voters cannot choose those particular ballots. And just be patient with the process. It's longer for our precinct officials. At one stop, there are 20 different ballot styles that they'll have to scan to give the correct styles out. So certainly patience and vote early, because that will avoid your long lines on Election Day.
Yeah. So I know one of the things that you have to do is hire staff. You have a certain number that's pretty much your year-round staff, but during an election you have to hire staff. How is that going?
It's going good. Our count for Election Day currently is 599 people. We've got a few vacancies, but we're working that. We've got over 200 people working early voting across those 8 sites. We're required to do split shifts because of the length of the shifts to avoid substantial overtime. So we've had to recruit and onboard, or we've had people, but we've been doing some additional recruiting to get upwards of 800 people to work this election event. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of training going into that.
Yeah. So if somebody's interested in working with your office, what do they need to do?
They can actually go to our website. We've got a online precinct official application. If you fill that out, and you indicate that you might want to help in the office or work Election Day or work early voting, we're still onboarding people for this election and plan to continue as it usually goes all the way up until the week or so before the election.
Great. Now, a lot of people might be surprised to know that you actually have an elections board. Tell us about that membership.
Yeah, so the Durham County Board of Elections is comprised of 5 members. Those members, excluding the chair, are appointed by the State Board of Elections. The chair is appointed by the governor. So typically the makeup of a county board of elections is a 3-2, where the majority is the party of the governor. Not required by law, but typical, and then there's obviously a minimum number of each party based on who has the highest registration totals in the state, which are the Democratic and Republican parties. The board is a quasi-judicial policy-making board. They decide on matters of, legal matters. They make final rulings on protests. They hire a director. And that director carries out administrative tasks as delegated by that board. Okay. Their term is for 2 years, and then they'd be up for reappointment under that same structure.
Right, and I would imagine they meet on a regular basis.
They do. We meet once monthly currently. Very soon it'll be once a week as dictated by law. So lots of meetings if you're interested in coming and seeing the process with the Board of Elections.
Great. Well, again, we'd just like to thank you and your staff for taking on this task. It's an incredible amount of work, but you guys do it very well, and we appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. And we're going to get you back on whenever we need to so you can give the residents the proper information about voting.
Anytime.
All right. Yep. Well, you have a good one.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Please join us next time for the next edition of In Touch with Durham County. Cheers.